Today's guest is Pam DeGraffenreid. She's a senior Microsoft 365 developer and tech lead at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which is one of the Department of Energy's labs around the country, and this one happens to be managed by UT-Battelle. Pam is also a Microsoft 365 or Microsoft MVP and a leader of the Knoxville M365 User Group. Pam, I met through interactions in this arena, if you will, as we both work in the government space, and so we kind of connected around Microsoft 365. So thanks for joining me today, Pam.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here. Super happy to be here.
So for those who don't know, or maybe they do, but they're not listening today, talk about where you're from, who you are, and what you do.
Okay, so again, my name is Pam DeGraffenreid. You got all the highlights. I've been working in Microsoft. So true story, I was I think 28 years old when I got my first job using a computer. Like I had never really used one. So it was it was such a really unique opportunity for me. I got a job at a manufacturing plant, and I had all of this software out there. All of these processes that were being done in Word and Excel, and there was so much data entry and so many manual things that I was really interested in automating because I don't like repetition, like those kinds of things. So of course that kind of totally checks out with my career and being interested in automation. But I asked the IT department, I said, do you have something like some books, because that's how we used to learn things on how I can do some of this. And they gave me a set of CDs, and they were CBTs that went through Word, Excel, PowerPoints, Access, the whole thing. So I went ahead and I did all the CBTs. I certified in all of those. I got it was a MOS certification, the Master Office certification, and I automated everything. And so I quickly became the person that if you had something that was just a nightmare to do, that they would give to me because they knew that if she has to do it, she will automate it. So that was really how I got my start. And so I started off automating things that I hated. And once I got the certifications, I was able to use that to get my first IT job. So that was a long time ago. And shortly from there, I ended up at the Army Research Lab, which is DoD. And that was so I was at Aberdeen. My husband was in Adelphi. So it was a really eye-opening experience, first of all, working for the government. And but I got a lot of experience there. And while I didn't necessarily, we ended up moving to Tennessee, so I didn't stay in the government then. That experience that I got is really the thing, one of the key things that changed my career, because there was a lot of opportunity there. I did get to do a lot of different things. We were short-staffed, and so I had chances to get into everything from some automation to desktop support and engineering, and to running a help desk in a solution center. So that was, well, it wasn't the whole solution center. It was a smaller one, but still, it was an amazing opportunity to kind of figure out how all of those things work. Because as you know, IT is such a big thing. Even back then, we had all of these different groups, and how do you bring them all together? How do you communicate with everybody? It's definitely a learning curve. And of course, IT people have changed a lot over the years.
Oh, they have, right? Well, the technology's forced that change, which is becomes a change management becomes the job, not just technology. Well, I'm curious. So you said at 28 was when you got your first job in technology. So what did you do before that?
So this is a great story. I'm glad you asked. I worked at a high-end jewelry store. So I was the jewelry store that I worked at, they were opening a new location. I was one of the only salespeople that they were keeping. But as they closed the store to move, they laid me off. And I was kind of newly married. So I have this layoff. I'm like, this is perfect. I've got 3 months. I'm just going to stay at home and relax. It's going to be wonderful. So we're like 2 weeks into this. I'm reading like 2 books a week because I love to read. So my husband says, hey, just kind of thinking out loud here, but if you're home all day, instead of like splitting the housework, maybe you could do that. And then when I'm home nights and weekends, we can just spend time together. And I thought about it and I was like, that's a totally valid point. And so I went to the temp agency the next day and I got the job at the manufacturing company.
That's
So,
great.
um, and it was interesting, like, as soon as I started building things, as soon as I realized what automation could do and how I could just take things that were crazy, complicated, time consuming, and how much time I could save, um, I I just absolutely loved it. I don't know how else to explain it except that it was, for me, it was just like, it was like falling in love. I was so obsessed. I wanted to automate everything.
Wow.
Everything. And so that was a long time ago. So I didn't have the skills and I didn't have the technology at the time to really be able to embrace automation like I can now. But totally obsessed. It was amazing. The very,
What?
very
I mean,
happy
there was
time.
what? There was a VB code inside Office, right?
That's right.
Microsoft Access was my tool of choice for many, many, many years.
Yeah, I built so many things there. And what was terrible is after I left the manufacturing company, um, it was 2 years later and one of these things that I built broke and they called me and said, hey, can we talk through this? It's been 2 years. I'm like, sure. I don't know how much I remember, but I learned so much. That was the first thing that I built in Access. And then to come back like a few years later and look at it, it's like, oh, I'll make you a deal. I will help you and you will pretend you have no idea who built this.
That's great.
So, because while I had read the book, I had no best practices, I had no lessons learned, I had no experience, I had nobody around me to like help me or guide me. Naming conventions, why would you use that? Like,
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy.
Was the DoD job the next thing after that manufacturing job?
It was, it was.
Those are supposed to be hard to get jobs. How do you land at DoD?
Another great story. So I so at this point, I'm still not in IT. So I'm doing all of this stuff and I'm like, I really want an IT job. I got the certifications and I saw that DoD, that the Army Research Lab was hiring. So I'm working still and my husband had just gotten out of the Army and when I applied to the job, they said, hey, can you drop off your resume? And I'm like, well, I can't. I can get my husband to drop it off. So my husband, when he dropped off my resume, and they hired both of us.
Oh,
So
that's great.
yeah, so they were, you know, uh, a lot of times those positions are managed by contracts, and so they were switching out the companies that managed the contract. So they were hiring a bunch of people, and he was doing infrastructure at the time. So
Wow,
so
that's
yeah,
so serendipitous that as he retired and potentially needed a job, maybe not, right? But it landed in his lap, and I love that.
yeah, yeah. Well, he didn't retire. He got out. It was, um, it, he was at the point where he was going to get deployed again.
Oh, yeah.
I did not want him to get deployed again. So it was a good chance for him to get out and for us to all stay home together.
Yes, very familiar with that. I got out of the Air Force before my remote assignment, which would have left my wife with a 1 year old for a whole year. So I totally get it.
Yes, and no regrets.
Yeah, right, right. So then what was after DoD? Was this where you're at now or something else?
We moved. So my dad is from Tennessee. I have a bunch of extended family here. And I used to come down here during the summer all the time. So I have nothing but amazing memories in Tennessee. and my grandmother's house, we'd been renting it out for years. She had passed away, and my dad called and said, "Hey, we are going to have to, like, the house is just being destroyed by renters. So if anyone wants to go, let me know." At that point, my husband was in Adelphi, I was in Aberdeen, 9/11 had happened, like, we were living between DC, Aberdeen Proving Grounds, and Peach Bottom Nuclear Power Plant, like, in this little area, and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to just not be in such a high stress area.
Mhm.
So I covered the handset. I told my husband, I said, "Hey, any interest in moving to Tennessee?" He said, "Yeah, if you can make it happen." And I told my dad, I said, "Yeah, hold it for us." And that was it. That's how we made the decision to move to Tennessee.
Wow, that's awesome. That's uniquely quick.
Yes. Yeah, it was the whole conversation. I think within that week he put in his notice and he went down and started fixing the house up, and I moved a few months later, and I love it here. I love it. It's the best decision I've ever made for myself. I mean, maybe not the best, but it's in the top. And
Sure.
Shortly after I got here, I had this great idea that I was just going to take some time off and not work for a little while. And I couldn't get into school right away. I wanted to go back to school, and I couldn't get in because I could, but out of state residency applied. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just wait and I'll just, hang out until then. My husband's like, well, there's this one job, like, you should apply. And I was like, well, it'll be a long shot. Like, what are the chances that I get this job, right? I applied on Tuesday. I was working Monday, like,
Wow.
just like that. So things seem to happen really quickly sometimes for me. But yeah, so that turned around quickly. And I was doing a lot of scripting there, deployments, like software deployments and things like that. Did some third tier support for things that, were just really weird and challenging. The accounting department was always the big challenge, right? Because they have these Excel spreadsheets
Hmm.
that are literal whole applications built with formulas, and, they would break, somebody would leave. That's what I spent my time on. That's what I remember about it. And they had an opening for SharePoint. And that was something that I was really interested in. I had seen over the years so many people doing so many things to get around working with IT. And SharePoint is like the ultimate empowerment tool because you need a calendar, you need a site, you need to share information. You don't have to talk to anybody, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, you don't have to learn. Like, if you take classes, it will be easier or more fun, but you don't have to. It's even, back in, that was, we were coming out of 2003 into, Moss. So it was, even back then, there were so many easy things that you could do, so many wins. I don't know if you remember or ever heard of Calendar Creator,
Oh, yes.
but, but I was so excited. That was like day one. I was like, I am going to teach everyone about SharePoint calendars. You never have to use Calendar Creator again.
And SharePoint Calendar for a great many years was the go-to until well, actually it still sort of is with Teams and Outlook.
Right. Yeah. 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 So many options, all good shareable options now. They were just like Calendar Creator was the worst. So,
Wow. And so then is that and then how did you come upon the job at the labs?
so I after I left Scripps, I did some consulting. I went back to manufacturing for a few years. Like, there is something about manufacturing that I just love. It's lean, it's efficient. Like, that whole thing just really, I went back and did that for a few years. I came back, I had to travel quite a bit for that, and I wanted to be at home. So I was at Atkins Nuclear Secured, and they worked a lot with O&M. And so it kind of got me back into that government world.
Hmm.
And I made a connection there, and they started hiring a SharePoint person. And people kept calling me. They were like, "Hey, O&L is hiring a SharePoint person. Are you applying?" And I said, "No." Someone else said, are you hiring? Are you going? Are you interviewing for that? I said, no. Like, I got to like the eighth person, and I called the guy who was hiring that I knew. And I was like, hey, just to let you know, like, all these people are asking me if I'm interviewing, and I'm not applying for it. I don't want to go back to government. Like, I'm good where I'm at, right? He said, oh, like, I totally understand that. Like, I didn't have any expectations. We should meet and get together for coffee. It was a trap.
Mhm.
It
Yep.
was a trap. We met, we talked, I applied, I had my interview. So I've been at the lab a couple of years, and I don't tell them how much I like them, but I really do. I enjoy the people there so much.
That's great. Well, and there is something different about public missions, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is the one of the things, you try to balance this. When you're in the government and you have a mission, you're so focused on the success of the mission, compared to when you're contracting and you're just like, I got to get my billable hours in, like, I have to meet my deadlines. It's just such a different drive.
Mhm.
And uh, people have a different focus that way, and so you get a lot more human touch when you have that kind of mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
So
Pam. So looking back, as you consider your career, what's something that you wish those of us in IT, we just did it differently? Or maybe, it could be HR related, it could be um, hiring, firing, it could be, I don't know, it could be anything that you've seen. So looking back, what's something you think we could do better than we do it today?
um soft skills, like 100% soft skills. One of the biggest advantages I think that I have is that I didn't have a computer until I was older. I
Mhm.
learned to talk to people. I learned to have conversations, to make eye contact. I had that little bit of sales experience. Like, I learned how to close a deal. I learned how to not take no for an answer. And that, things are not personal. It's all a negotiation, So uh, when I got involved in the user group, that was an extension of those soft skills, but continuing those and having that networking, and being comfortable putting yourself out there. It's not easy. I'm not always comfortable, but I
Mhm.
continue to do it because it's 100% responsible for my growth. Like, if I look at speaking, organizing, all of those things, all of the connections I make, it's I got um I got a bunch of names and contacts when I went to Reston, and just like cold reaching out to people and being like, hey, I'd really like to get to know you and talk about stuff, and like, you hope that people are open and receptive to that. But it creates so much opportunity. You never know when you're going to run into somebody again, or what those connections are going to be like, how they're going to play out. And it just helps you in so many different ways. So I think soft skills and getting back to that, putting your phone aside, just really connecting with people is just so important.
I would totally agree with you. I'm big in the user group communities because I think community can help solve problems,
Yes,
or might be the next person you hire because you need a position filled, or it could just be just a good fellowship, like-minded people who are geeky as you are.
that's right. That's right. I mean, I love what I do. I'm a little more introverted outside of my tech community, but when I'm with my people, I'm just like, I'm so excited. Like, I do really enjoy um, all of it, all of it. And everyone's like, you're not an introvert. And I was like, well, it really depends on who I'm with. So, yeah, definitely appreciate the user group so much. We just had our first community day. We have one in 2023 at the end of the year. We had another one this year. Just seeing everybody come out and having those big groups of people together that are like-minded, it's very energizing.
Yeah, it's an exciting time right now because it's post-COVID. people are ready to interact again. We're still kind of relearning our social skills,
Yes.
but we have these opportunities to throw events and have people show up, and they're responding. It's been very interesting here in the DC area. We have a number of user groups that are finally moving back to in person, and or trying to figure out how to be hybrid, because many of them attracted a following that was outside the DC area during COVID when everything was remote. So yeah, totally agree with you. And your soft skills are so important to those interactions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So as you're looking forward, what's coming up here in the near future for you?
That is a great question. You know, we are, I'm working mostly on right now on user group things. We have a lot of interest in user group community days, but getting those regular meetings together, it's a little different, and trying to figure out what that means. So there's 2 user groups here. We're planning already for the next community days. And I'm working now with Nashville and Memphis. So Daniel Glenn in Nashville and Ahmad Salih in Memphis. So we're going to do Tennessee days, Knoxville, Nashville, Memphis. So we're very excited about that, and looking forward to planning that, and just some speaking opportunities, looking at all the user groups, and just really hoping to continue to connect, speak, grow.
Awesome. Well, Pam, you're such a vibrant personality, and I love that I got to connect with you here in DC when you were in for the event, and I look forward to interacting with you in the years ahead.
Absolutely, me too. Thank you so much for having me.